Hey guys, welcome to a new tutorial with PSD Box. I'm Andrei, and today I'm gonna show you how I made this manipulation in Photoshop CC. You can use other versions of Photoshop, but if you have at least Photoshop CS6, it will be a lot easier for you. And what I'm going to show you today is how to work with 3D renders, stock images, and the regular manipulation techniques like blending images using blend modes and layer masks and that kind of things. For this tutorial, we're not going to use any difficult selections or anything like that. Just some basic light effects. I'm going to show you how I created this torch over here and how I created the lights for this ATV right over here, and how I added the moon and made some of the adjustments here to create this night scene in Photoshop. On the video description, you'll have the links that will take you to my website, and from there you can download all the stock images. Most of them are from unsplash.com, and if you're a premium member, you will be able to download the whole PSD file if you want to have it, and if you want to watch how just take a look at it and see how I made all of these layers over here. We're gonna go step by step, so it's not gonna be a very difficult tutorial, but I hope you will enjoy it. And well, let's get started. So if you follow my tutorials, you will know that almost always I start with the background, and this time is no exception. Let's press Ctrl-Command-O. Here inside the resources folder, also if you're a premium member, you will be able to download this folder zipped with everything that it has in here. But as I said, most of them are from unsplash.com, so you will find them there. But in case they remove some of the images, if you're a premium member, you will be able to download the folder with all of the stock images here. So I'm going to start with, let's see, where is that image that I used? You will find inside the resources folder, you will see that there are some stock images that I didn't use, like for example this one. I placed them in here because these were images that I wanted to use, and I thought they would be suitable for this manipulation, but in the end I ended up not using them. But I will leave them here just in case you want to use them and create something different than I made. But I'm gonna start with this one with Thomas Roberts. I'm going to click open, and this is the stock image that I use for actually the foreground, not the background. So I'm going to unlock this, and I'm going to double click the layer to convert it onto a normal layer, and I'm going to flip it. I'm going to press Ctrl T and right click and choose flip horizontal. And the reason why I do this is because I wanted to put the head right over here, and I wanted to have the guy standing right over there. I don't know why, but I like this framing a little better. Next, let's name this foreground before we forget. And now let's open the other image. Actually, let's open the mountains. I used this other image to create the mountains there on the background. So I'm gonna open this image, and I'm gonna Control A, Control X, and Control W. If you're downloading these images from unsplash.com, before you start this tutorial, I suggest you download all of them. It's going to be easier for you. So download all of them, put them inside a folder, and start following the tutorial. I think it's easier. So I'm going to make this just a little bigger. Zooming in at 100%, it looks like that. What I'm going to do is put this new image, which I'm going to name Mountains. I'm going to drag this layer under the foreground layer. And you can see that now it's not visible because the foreground is covering everything. Now I'm going to select the foreground, create a new layer mask. And in order to delete the top part, I'm going to use the gradient tool because it's easier. I'm going to use a linear gradient. Mode normal, opacity 100%, and uncheck transparency. Select here, important, choose black to white. So just click this gradient. This will open the gradient editor and reset everything. Click this icon here. Maybe you have a manual icon, it depends on the Photoshop version that you're using, and choose reset gradients and click OK, and choose black to white. It's a default gradient that comes with Photoshop. And as I said, we're going to use linear, and we're going to start our gradient more or less from where this ruin ends, and something like that. Make sure that you're not seeing the old sky. For example, you're not doing this. You don't want to see that white area. Just start from here and end about there. We have to edit this gradient most likely, but we'll see that after we move these mountains. Now select the mountains layer, use the move tool with the V key and just drag this a little higher up, right over there. And now you can select this foreground layer mask, get the brush tool and use a soft brush, a round soft brush, with an opacity of 50 and oops, let's see, okay, and with opacity of 50 and flow about 30. With a big soft brush you can and even lower opacity, maybe 30 and flow 10. Just paint with black, okay, to get rid of some of this and help blend it a little better, especially here on the sides. So this line over here on the foreground should be your guide, more or less. You don't want to remove this ruins the tips of it, so that's why I'm using such a low opacity and flow value. Okay, something like that. I think that looks okay. Try dragging this a little lower, mountains, and see how that looks. Just try and blend both images, and that's it. We're gonna make adjustments, so right now they're not fitting too well, but we're gonna add adjustments to this. Next, we have to replace the sky. I wanted to create a night scene, so I used a different sky for this. I used this one because it had the moon there on the background. Let's wait for the preview to open. Now it looks like it's not opening on full screen. Okay, we have this moon here, which I liked, so that's why I used this one. But you can use a night sky with stars if you want. It would look nice just as well. And we're gonna put this underneath everything. If you press and hold the control key and click the new layer icon, this will create a new layer underneath. Let's name this sky. And with control V, I'm gonna paste my image over there. It's not visible because the mountains is covering it. But now we have to create the same that we did for the foreground. Select the mountains, create a layer mask for it. Now we have to hide the sky here. Again, we don't need precise selections of the mountains, just a soft gradient. So we're gonna use a linear gradient, black to white, and just maybe start from here and there, or maybe even from lower. And now we're gonna select the sky with the V key, and we're gonna move it right over here. And this is how it looks like. Now I have to retry the gradient just to see how that looks. If we can make it blend a little better. Maybe the sky, we should make it a little smaller because it's really big. Like that. And just raise it up a little bit. And let's redraw the gradient. That looks a little better. And now with the brush, you can fine tune this. Really low opacity and flow. 30 and 10 is okay, 30 flow and 10 for the 30 for the opacity and 10 for the flow, sorry. And that's pretty much it. Really basic background here. And with just simple masking, you can create stuff like this. It's not really that difficult. And then we're gonna create the adjustments. So we're gonna add all the elements, and then we're gonna create adjustments and make them fit together. Let's press Ctrl Command O, and you will find two images here. This one and this one. I rendered this one with the light over here, as I said, on purpose because I knew I wanted to create that kind of manipulation. But I also included this like daytime, let's call it, version with the shadow if you want to use it on daylight images or manipulations. I'm gonna use this one, Triceratops 2. Open it, Control A, Control X, Control W, and not save. I'm gonna paste this over here. I'm gonna name this skull. Now the size is correct for this canvas size because I created the background actually, and then I created the render of this with the correct size. And I'm gonna put it right over there. I think maybe right over here. Like so. Just like look at the contact points with the ground, and that's it. I'm gonna put it right over there. Okay, next we're gonna add the ATV right over there. For that I used Pixel Squid, but you're gonna find the PNG version of it with the right angle. But as you can see, I have a folder here from pixelsquid.com. I created these light boxes with all the dinosaurs, and I included this ATV. So just click there. I know most of you don't have this installed, I guess, but it's a plugin for Photoshop. And just rotate this however you want. Let go. You can include or exclude the shadow, and Photoshop will update this because this is a smart object now. I'm gonna rotate it about that, I guess. That angle is correct, or this one. I'm gonna leave the shadows on. That way I don't have to paint them. Okay, I'm gonna make it smaller. Now, as I said, you'll find this as a PNG format, and the scale here is it's quite important because we have to give the feeling that this is really giant dinosaur head, and the person standing there was really small, and so should be this ATV. I'm gonna leave it right over there and probably move the head a little bit towards the left. Great. Next, what's next? Let's add our moon, for example. Open the moon image, and you can see it's on black background, which is really easy to extract. You can use the magic wand, just click there and on the black background, and you can see that you can select everything. If you see jagged edges here and you don't want to have that, you can really use the ellipse tool. Just drag. If you click on the ruler here and click and drag, you can create guides, and create a guide more or less to the center of the moon. And then with the elliptical marquee tool, just shift click there on where both lines intersect, and you can create a perfect circle. And if you also press the Alt key, you're gonna resize from the center and just create a selection like that, a little smaller than the moon itself. Nobody would know that. And that's it. You can also transform the selection. If you right click, you can choose transform selection. If you don't see this here, just go to select, modify, and choose expand, or from here you should see transform selection. And this was just like using the transform tool. Press enter, and now you can create the layer mask, and it's gone. Let's hide these guides. With Control H you can hide them. And now I'm going to apply the layer mask. I no longer need it. And now I'm going to press the V key and move this to my canvas and let go over here. Now we have to change the position of this. We have to put it above the sky, under everything, or actually above the foreground, everything, about the whole background layers, all of the background layers, okay? And we're going to make this smaller. Not as small as this, a little bigger, just to cover it. And having a bigger moon, it's gonna have more of an impact on our scene here. About, maybe I think that big is okay. And we'll have that glow underneath it, which is nice. Okay, let's name this layer moon. And we're gonna make the adjustments and styles and everything after we add everything here on the scene. The only thing that is left to add is our guy standing over there. This guy standing here with a torch on his hand. And for that, let's close this image. For that, I used an image from Unsplash, of course. This one over here. Let's open it. I'm gonna make a really quick selection for this. We don't need any precise selections because this image is really big and we need a very small version of this. So you can start with the quick selection tool if you want. You can also try the magnetic lasso tool. I didn't use this for years, maybe. Just go like that, follow the edges, and create your selection. One tip, now you can see that when I get here to the bottom, in order to move this, you have to press the space bar, move this away, and you can continue with your selection when you let go. Actually, I think I'm gonna make the whole selection with this. As I can see, it works really well. It's not as fast as the quick selection, but it's a lot more precise. So I'm gonna try and make the selection with this. I'm gonna fast forward and continue my selection. Remember the space bar when you get to an area where you wanna move your image, your canvas, just press and hold the space bar and move your image, click and move, and then let go and continue with your selection. So I'm gonna fast forward and finish my selection here. Okay, I'm done with this selection. I'm going to create a layer mask. We have to make some touch-ups. I'm going to disable the layer mask just for a second. And actually, I'm going to drop, if you double click on it, depending on your Photoshop version, you have here the density, which is like the opacity of the layer mask, and the feather. If you don't have it here, you have to right click and choose mask options or something like that. On older versions of Photoshop, you have some options here, but I don't know how to access them because I always just double clicked on this and that's it. Oops, that was apply layer mask. So what I'm gonna do is just drop the density so I can see it better. I'm gonna get the brush tool, opacity and flow 100%, 0 and shift 0 on your keyboard, and I'm gonna make the brush smaller. I'm gonna use a hard edge for this. Oops, and just paint with white. The small brush to fix areas that need some fixing. Let's see. You can disable and re-enable the layer mask pressing and holding the shift key and clicking on the layer mask. This will disable it temporarily. I think that's okay. And here on the hand, we have to fix a finger. Like that. Let's see what else. Yeah, that's part of his forearm here. We don't need a really precise selection. Something like this is more than enough because we're gonna make this guy so small that we're not gonna be able to see the edge quality. So don't worry too much about getting pixel perfect selections. Now I'm gonna put the density back to 100%. Right click on the layer mask and apply it because I know the selection is okay. Control A, Control X just to cut it, and I'm gonna put this guy right over here on top of the skull. Well, actually on top of everything, and I'm gonna convert this into a smart object. Right click and choose convert to smart object, and I'm gonna change the name of this to guy. Okay, now I can safely make it smaller because I know I can change the size of him whenever I want without losing quality. So I'm gonna place him right over here, and let's see how small we should make him. I don't know where to place him. Maybe I'm going to place him right over there. But we have to also check the size compared to the ATV because I'm going to press enter. With the ATV, I pressed enter because I have this as a smart object, and if I need to make it back bigger again, I can press Ctrl-Command-T and make it bigger again. About that big compared to the ATV. I think this is the correct size, more or less. And just place him right over here. Actually, on this rock over there, maybe. Let's see the original. Well, actually, he was standing, yeah, on that rock over there. Oops, let's close this and place this guy right over here. Okay, now we have them in place. One other thing that we have to do is add a torch and the flame itself. You can find an image of a torch with a light, with a fire on it, but I have two stock images for that. I created a torch on purpose using a 3D object. Lately, I've been working a lot with Sketchfab, and actually on resources.psd box, which is my other website where I upload only stock images and resources, all of them for free, of course. I uploaded lots of packs with this kind of stock images from rendered images, and this torch is perfect for what I need here. I'm going to zoom in at 100%, pressing Ctrl-Command-1, and even more zoom, about that big. Place it right over there, and I'm going to drag this under the guy layer. That way I don't have to create the layer mask, and you can see that it's too thick, so we have to make it even smaller because his hand is not that big. I think that looks okay. Let's name this layer torch. And now we have to add the fire. Again, on the resources folder, I used an image from unsplash.com, which is this one. And also you can see that I have different moon images also from Unsplash. You can see that there, and other skies. So you can create combinations here. Let's open this image of the fire. No, the sky, the fire, I said. Yeah, and I'm going to crop it with the rectangular marquee tool. I'm just going to crop this part. Control X, and I'm going to paste this on top of the guy as well, the guy and the torch. and I have to make it smaller. Now, before I make it even smaller, I'm gonna change the blend mode to screen. I don't need this black background, I just need the fire. And luckily, we have the screen blend mode, which gets rid of all of that except the black background. You can see that it's not completely gone, the background. You can see this edges here, and that's because it's not completely black. If you press Ctrl Command L with this layer selected, which I'm gonna name Flame, select that layer, press Ctrl Command L, and you can see the graphic here, the spike, and we have this gap here. This means we have no blacks. So we just have to, in order to fix this, since we have the screen blend mode, the only thing we need is to make this even blacker. Okay, so just click here, drag this to the right until those edges are gone, and click OK. Now we're ready to rotate this flame and put it right over there. I'm gonna rotate it, Ctrl T, right click and choose flip horizontal, and I'm gonna rotate it like that. Yeah, you can see that this part over here is gonna fit exactly on our torch there. We just have to make it smaller. Make it smaller, zoom in, and 100%, or actually even more, and just try and fit that over there. And the flame size will be perfect. Okay, like that. You don't have to do anything than this. You can see it looks really realistic. And because the guy has that light on him, because, well, he was holding a flare or something, that is gonna look realistic. The color is not right, but we're gonna fix that next. So we have now all the elements on the scene. This is the raw scene, and the next thing we want to do is start blending everything together and make it look realistic and create that night scene. We're gonna start with the background, so we're gonna hide everything else, and I'm gonna show you how to do that. If you press and hold the Alt key or Option on a Mac, click the eye icon. This will hide everything except that layer, and then start enabling the rest of the layers until you get something like this, the moon and the background. We're gonna start editing the foreground, which is this image over here, and that because it's the biggest chunk of background that we have here, actually the foreground. And then we're gonna adapt the rest of the elements, like these mountains and everything, to match this. So I'm gonna start with the foreground. I'm gonna add a color lookup for this. Color lookup, and I'm gonna clip it. If you click this icon, I'm gonna clip this to the foreground, which means that this color lookup now only affects the foreground. And I used the night from day. If you type night from day, it's gonna select it for you, and voila, this is the night effect. As easy as that. Now, if you don't have Photoshop CC, you will not be able to get this effect, at least Photoshop CS6, sorry, because they introduced the color lookup in Photoshop CS6. So a workaround for that would be to add a solid color and use a really dark, well, not really that dark, something like this bluish tone, and change the blend mode to multiply, and you will get something kind of similar. Okay, so just darken your whole image using this bluish tone, and maybe desaturate with Ctrl U, or using a hue saturation level beneath the color fill, and drop the saturation a little bit, and you will get something very close to what I get here with the color lookup. So that's another way of doing this if you don't have the color lookup. Great. Now I left this at the normal blend mode, and I dropped the opacity to 75% because it was too strong. And you can tell that it's a night scene by the colors and the tones of the image. You don't have to make something pitch black because it's not realistic. That's a mistake that a lot of people make when they hear about night effects. They start making everything so black that you cannot even tell the differences. The moon and the colors, the tones will tell that this is a night scene, and it will look nice as well. It doesn't have to be pitch black. Okay. Next, let's work with the mountains. That we're done with the foreground. We don't have to do anything else. Well, actually, we're gonna paint some shadows later, but for now we're done. Let's select the mountains layer. And here I used layer styles. I could use adjustment layers, but I thought I would use layer styles. Sometimes when I have small objects, I use layer styles, especially if I need something that covers the whole layer, because layer styles can do that. For example, instead of using a solid color layer, I could use a color overlay, and it's exactly the same. It's exactly the same. And we have we have blend mode, so we save some space here on the layers palette. This is just a way of doing things. You don't have to do it like me if you don't want to. And here, let me give you the layer styles that I have. So I have inner shadow first. I created this inner shadow because the moon was here. Right now it's not looking right, the moon, but anyways. I added some top light here on the mountains, and I'm gonna give you the color value. So just click here on the color, and I use the color value 68C3F2. Click OK. I used an angle of 90 degrees. The color that I use is color dodge, and I dropped the opacity to, well, actually we're gonna leave it to 50%, and we're gonna see if we have to change this later on. Next, I use the color overlay, as I was saying, because I have to match the color of this, of the mountains, to the foreground here. You could use a color lookup again, and it's gonna be easier for you maybe, but I don't know, I did it like this, and that's it. And I'm gonna use the multiply blend mode, okay, and just drop the opacity. Use you can even sample from the sky if you want, just something that's not really that saturated and it's not really black like that. You don't want to tell the difference between the two, so just use something similar. Click OK, and then just drop the opacity to where you see fit, and that's it. Now here, the layer mask, I don't really like it. I want to have something a little softer. Here I'm gonna use 50 and 20, and just paint with black. Just blend in a little bit the edges. I don't know if you could see it, but when I added the effect there, I could tell the difference. I could see that straight line, which I didn't like. So I'm just gonna mask it just a little bit. Okay. Next, let's work with the moon. I use layer styles for the moon, so I'm gonna select it, double click on the layer to open the layer styles. And here I used inner shadow. So just select inner shadow. I used the screen blend mode here, and I'm gonna increase the opacity at 100%. I'm gonna zoom in at 100% again. Well, first let's click OK. Zoom in because I want to see the edges that I'm painting here. Let's reopen the layer styles, and here on the inner shadow, I'm gonna give you the values that I have. So distance and choke 0 and size 49. You could just as well use inner glow. It's exactly the same. The difference is that this is directional, so if I increase the distance, this is gonna go down. That's the only difference between the inner shadow and the inner glow. The inner glow creates the effect from all sides, and you don't have the option to change the angle. Okay, and that's it. Let's add a color overlay now. Color overlay. Again, we're going to choose the screen blend mode. We have to make this brighter. I use the cyan tone for this, a little brighter like this. Don't worry, we lose contrast here, but we're going to add it back on using a level. So just click OK, and this is not a smart object, so I don't want to lose the editing capabilities of this. So I'm going to use the levels adjustment layer on top, and I'm going to clip it. Click this icon or alt click between the layers. This will clip it, and now this levels only affect the moon, and I just want to darken the blacks like this. Okay, just to before and after, increase the effect over there. And now I'm gonna go back to the effects, because on the color overlay I want to have something more saturated like that. Okay, now it looks a lot better. Okay, and there we have it. If you want to add some outer glow as well to make it look a little maybe more cinematic or whatever you want, you can use an outer glow and use a white color. It doesn't really matter, because we're going to use the screen blend mode. Well, actually we have to use cyan, sorry. A cyan tone like that, and spread, leave it to 0, and just increase the size, and that's it. And if it has too much effect, simply use a darker tone, and that's it. And the more you decrease the range, the stronger the the stronger the effect. Okay, so the stronger the effect on the base of the object, and it's gonna go stronger and stronger until you get something like that. Okay, I'm gonna use something darker like so. Okay, you can see that just a touch, but it looks nice. Okay, we have the moon over there. Let's move on and reactivate the skull. And this one looks good, but well, besides the fact that we have what's called fireflies here, I'm not really that good at renderings, so I forgot to activate some settings there on Sketchfab to avoid fireflies. But if you want to fix it, it's simply a matter of using the spot healing brush and just make a few clicks to get rid of this bad pixels over here. Okay, so it's really quick and easy to fix. Sorry about that. I'm gonna remove this really quickly, and I'm not gonna do for all of them, but just to show you that you can fix that. Okay, now I made some really basic adjustments to this. I used, I think, let me check my notes. I used some inner glow and I used a selective color adjustment layer. So let's start with the selective color. Select the skull, go down here and choose selective color. Now we know that the dominant color here on our manipulation is blue, so all you need to do is just go to the neutral tones, because they're the ones that are here. Basically you're affecting the gray tones on your image, and I set the following values for the cyan, just to give it a touch of blue. And I don't know if you can notice it, but let's see, before and after. Let's zoom in 100% so you can see it better. Before and after, just a touch of blue, well, of cyan actually. Then -6 for magenta, this will add more green. Let's clip this to the skull. And then yellow, -10, this will add blue. And then for the blacks, 16. This will darken the whole thing. Now, I'm gonna make a quick explanation of what happened here, just for people that don't know how to use the selective color or what this does. The selective color, what it does is it gets the image, the colors over here, and changes the values of cyan, magenta, and yellow, and also the blacks of that particular color that you have selected. I selected neutrals because the skull itself does not have any color except for this yellow over here. And I wanted to add a touch of blue, so I added a bit of cyan. I removed a bit of magenta, which will add the opposite of magenta, which is green. And I also removed yellow, which adds blue. You don't see it here, but here, just as a visual reference, if you want. Here we have cyan, here we have red, here we have magenta, and here green, yellow, and blue. And this is black. This is, the more you increase this, the darker the color tone it gets, and the more you move it to the left, the more black you remove, because we have negative values. Okay, let's leave it back to 16. Now, once I remove this, it's gonna affect a little bit that yellow over there of the light. So I'm gonna go to yellows, and here I can make this yellow more red if I want by removing cyan. See that? Also, I could make it more red if I increase magenta. It's gonna have the same effect, because I'm adding magenta to something that is yellow, so it's gonna make something like that. And I can add even more yellow or remove, and by removing yellow I add blue, which means I get this sort of magenta, because blue and yellow get this sort of magenta tone. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it something like that. Maybe with the blacks I could, well, let's not touch that. Okay. Okay, we're done with the skull, and I made this really quick explanation of how that selective color works. Now, I want to add some light, rim light here on the skull from the moon. And I did that using layer styles. I am going to double click on the skull. This will open my layer style. Let me first zoom out a bit so I can see the whole thing. Now I'm going to go back to the layer styles, and I used the inner shadow. Okay, here if you use the inner glow, you will get something like this. You will get light all across the thing here, and we don't want that. We just want this on the top part. So I'm gonna give you the values that I have. Well, actually I don't have the values here, so I'm just gonna do it by eye. I'm gonna reduce everything to 0, and I'm gonna start with the blend mode. I'm gonna use color dodge, and I'm gonna use this cyan to start with. The color value, the exact color value, is not important, so please don't do that. Just look at the colors here and choose something similar, and you're gonna edit this on the go. So first I'm gonna start with the distance. I'm gonna increase the distance, and I have the angle to 90 degrees. That's important because I want the light to come from the top part. Okay, and now you can see how the color looks like. Now you'll be able to see it a lot better once you increase the size, which is going to soften this, something like that, to about 60 or 45 or something like that. And now you can change the tone here, or the color. If you want to have less effect, you have to use darker tones, just like on the screen blend mode. And also you can desaturate the color, which is going to give you a white tone. I want it to have a slightly bluish tint. And check the edges here and see how that looks like, and then disable and re-enable the effect to see how that looks like. For some reason it's not working. Oh yeah, because I have the color selected, the color selector opened. Before and after. It's kind of strong, so I'm gonna double click here. I'll actually click on the layers on the color selector and just drop it just a little bit. Okay, see, something like that. You don't have to make something really visible. You can see that light over here on this part over here. It looks great for me, and also this light over here. I'm gonna disable it so you can see before and after. It's just gonna help blend this a little better. Now, the light here is kind of strong. You cannot mask this because this is an effect. If you want to mask the effect, what you have to do is turn this effect onto onto its own layer. And what you do in order to get that is right click on the FX link on the FX layer and choose create layer. You're gonna get a warning message. Just click OK, and that's it. And this it's gonna put the inner shadow, as you can see here, on its own layer clipped to the object. And now you can create a layer mask for this effect, and you can see that it keeps the same blend mode. It's gonna keep the color dodge blend mode that I set, and the effects is gone now. So now I'm going to select this layer mask of the inner shadow, and with the brush tool 50 and 20, paint with black to get rid of that light and make it more even, like so. Okay, I'm going to check this part of here, the top, before and after. It looks more natural now. Okay, we're done with the skull. Let's move on and let's activate this ATV and make some stuff here. First, we have to make it darker, and we're going to use this with layer style. We're going to make this with layer styles, double click, and we're going to use a simple color overlay on multiply, and we're done. It's too saturated and too, okay, something like it. Too saturated and too bright, so before and after. It's really as simple as that. I'm not even going to mask the bottom part. You can do if you want. Next, we're going to create the lighting, but first let's move on and keep integrating stuff here. Let's activate the guy and make some adjustments to him as well. Let's take a look at this. You can see that he's lacking blacks. We have this washed black image here, and we have to color correct this light that's over him. We have to make it match this color over here and the color of the torch and the, well, actually not the torch, the flame. Okay, you can see the flame is orange, and his face and all of the light here is red, so we have to fix that. First, let's, since this is a smart object, I'm gonna press Ctrl Command L. If you don't have it as a smart object, you can create a levels and just clip this levels to the guy layer, and that's it. All we need to do is just increase this, well, darken the blacks like that, and also the midtones just a little bit. I'm going to make the whites a little brighter. Actually, the midtones, I'm going to leave it, well, make them just a touch brighter, and I'm going to leave him like that. Okay, I think that looks better. Now, I'm going to accept the change before and after. I think it looks a lot better. Try to match a little bit the contrast of the background here that he's standing on. And now let's fix the color. For that, I'm going to use hue saturation, and I'm going to create a hue saturation adjustment. I could use smart filters. As I said, just press Ctrl Command U on the guy. Why the hell this is underlined? I'm not sure. And here I just used the reds, or just click this hand icon. Click over here. This will sample your reds, and just change the hue a little bit and saturate it even more if you want to, and that's it. It's as simple as that. before and after. There are other methods. You could use maybe selective color and change the reds or whatever, but with the hue saturation I think is the easiest way. And we're done with this. The next thing we want to do is create some shadows, especially down here and across the image, and then create the light effect. So let's start with the shadows because it's really simple. And we're going to create a new layer on where, let's see where we can have to create this layer. We create this layer right under the ATV. This is going to be under the guy, and we don't want to create this under the skull. Well, actually we could, because the skull already has its own shadows. Let's create the layer over here and create shadows. Name this shadows. Get the brush tool, opacity 20, flow 10, paint with black, press the D key to reset your colors to black and white. And with a really soft brush, just paint a few shadows around here. Create a sort of a fake vignette effect and darken certain parts of the image, especially, well, actually it's a good idea to have it under the skull because we can create some more shadows underneath, which is okay. Okay, some shadows over there. I have this really low, but you can see that I already painted something. So you don't have to use something really obvious. Oops, let's not do that because I'm painting, not erasing. I wanted to erase the shadow that I painted right over there, but using a soft brush, a lot better. So you don't have to create something that is really that visible. Just a touch. Oops, let's reset the colors back to black. Okay, just something that is really soft, and you can create the build up the effect gradually. Okay, just soft shadows, and that's it. For the guy, we can paint some shadows right over here using something a bit harder for the brush. Oops, that shadow is not what I like. Right over there. Okay, now let's go with the light effects. The shadows were done, it's really easy. Let's go with the light effects. I'm going to create a new layer on top of everything, on top of the flame or whatever you have here on top. And let's name this light. Well, actually, light ground. Light ground. Okay, this is going to be on color dodge. This kind of lights that are reflected on the ground or on objects, I like to use the color dodge blend mode. Sometimes vivid light works or linear light, but most of the times the color dodge blend mode works. And I'm gonna create the light that this torch is painting on the ground. So I'm gonna get this yellowish tone. We have to. This is a bit of trial and error. Depends on the background that you have. And I'm gonna leave the opacity and flow to 100%, and I'm gonna drop. I'm going to activate the color no, not the color dynamics, the transfer option. I'm going to put this on pen pressure, and I'm going to drop the spacing. Now, I do this because I have a graphics tablet, and I can use the strength that I push, well, how strong I push on the pen to create more opacity or less. If you don't have the graphics tablet, what you have to do is drop the opacity and flow really low. Maybe start with 30 and flow 20. And start that way and just build up the effect. And the color tone that I'm going to start with working with is something like that. If it's too strong, well, actually this one it's kind of strong, and I'm not pushing almost at all on the brush. It's kind of strong, and what I'm going to do first is saturate it a little more, go more a bit towards the red, and drop my opacity to 50. And oh, okay, that looks a lot better. Now it's kind of red. It's too red for my taste, I think. But anyways, I'm gonna fix that later. And just paint a bit of light over here, like that. Right over there. Okay. The best advice I could give you here is when you paint this kind of lights to use really low opacities and flow and build up the effect gradually. If you use something really dark, you don't have to use really low opacities and flows because the effect is going to be less visible. So what I do is I use a stronger effect, a lot stronger than I would need, because if I paint this like this, it's going to build up the effect and it's going to look too strong. So I use something a little stronger than I actually need, and then drop the opacity and build up the effect gradually. Okay, this light is too red, so I'm going to press Ctrl Command U and just move this a little more towards, oh yeah, that's not good, 0, and a little more towards yellow. Yeah, something like that, and saturate it just a little more so I can see better. Yeah, 13, and drop the saturation back. Okay, so I have the light over there. Well, I still have to make the glow, but we're gonna do that next, because let's stick with this layer over here and create the light. I added some lights here on the ATV. These glows, I'm gonna make them on a different layer, the same as this one over here. But on the ground layer, I can create these lights here that this headlights create. So let's do that. I'm gonna work on the same layer, ground, light ground. But this time I'm going to use a unsaturated color, something a bit more bluish, like this. And I'm going to use the low opacity of flow. I'm going to start with opacity 50 and flow 30. And remember that I also have the pen pressure on the transfer. If you don't have this, maybe use half the settings that I have here, half the values on the settings. And just paint like that. Just a couple of clicks. See that before and after. Great. Now we have the light on the ground. Let's create a new layer and then name this glows. Because now we have to make the glows of the ATV. Let's start with this, and then for the torch. Here we're going to use the screen blend mode on this layer. So for glows and stuff like that, for physical or volumetric lights, use the screen blend mode. And here we're going to create, I'm going to use my inverted process to make this. I'm going to disable the transfer option. Basically, it consists of using 100% on opacity and flow. And we're going to start with the outer glow, and we're going to intensify the effect as we go towards the center of the light and the source of it. So I'm going to start with something really dark, like this, maybe. I'm going to click once. I'm going to do it with the mouse, actually. It's too strong. So instead of dropping the opacity of the brush, I'm using a darker color. Click once there, that's okay. Make the brush smaller because that one is a little more far away. Okay, now I'm gonna use a brighter tone. Click OK. Make the brush a couple of clicks smaller. Click again, and click again. Next. Something even brighter and less saturated, because the brighter the light is, the less saturated the color is. Couple of clicks smaller. There, and then yet something almost white. Almost white. And make just the tiny color. Oh, that's too strong for that one, so I'm going to use a darker tone. Okay, now we're done with the headlights. You can see that. It looks pretty nice, I think. Okay, let's go with the fire. And here we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna start with, I'm gonna sample the color from there and just use something really dark. Let's see, maybe that's too strong. It's kind of strong for my taste, for being the first glow. Okay, that one would look a lot better. There, I'm gonna make something brighter. Make the brush quite a lot smaller, like that. Then something really small over there. Oh, I don't want to cover that part. Maybe something a little more saturated will look nice. Let's see. Yeah, it looks nice. Okay, see the glow there? Okay, and we're done. This is the manipulation. We're done creating all the stuff. We're done blending all the images together, and the last thing we have to do is create the post-production. Create the final effects that will affect the whole image. Usually what I do is create a stamp with all the layers stamped onto a new layer, and for that I press Shift Alt Control E or Shift Option Command E on a Mac. You'll see the keyboard shortcut on the screen, and I'm gonna name this Final. And usually I turn this into a smart object, as you might know, and I use the Camera Raw filter. So I go to filter and choose Camera Raw. If you don't see this here, is because you don't use Photoshop CC. On previous tutorials I explained how to do this. Save this as a TIFF file and open it back in Photoshop, and you should open it here in Camera Raw. Just look at my other tutorials. And here I don't remember the settings that I have actually, so I'm gonna just increase the clarity a little bit. This will create the mid-tone contrast is gonna increase. Maybe I'm gonna increase the saturation, not the vibrance. The vibrance is gonna affect the blues and yellows especially, but in this case I'm not interested in that. Maybe also, let's see with the shadows what we can do. Add more lights on the shadows. Let's go to the effects and create some vignetting. Not very strong, but we're gonna decrease the midpoint to 0. Highlights, I'm gonna leave it to 100% so I can protect the highlights and increase the feather. What else? Here on HSL, I could change the color of this yellow with the HSL by maybe, for example, saturating it. Actually, it's yellow, it's not orange, not yellow. And with the hue, I could change the look of it. I could make it more green or more red, and you can see that the rest of the image is not affected. I think that looks nice. And also with this kind of filters here, you can add, for example, local light over there. I could first reset this, and I don't know, I could increase the exposure. I could increase the warmth only on that size over there, because I have this set to inside, and I increase the feather. And I could saturate the whole thing, or I could increase the clarity only here to maybe get more attention here. What else? Here on the ATV, I could create, for example, with this, with painting, I could create 2 rays of light like that. And first let's reset, and I could increase the exposure only on that part, but it's not looking nice, so this one I'm gonna remove it. Okay. What else? Let's go select the hand and go back to the whole image. On the split toning, I didn't touch it. You could create different tones for highlights and shadows, for example, like that, and create this sort of tones. I'm not interested in that. But here on the camera calibration, I like to work with this because I can create different tones using these channels over here. Like that. And this tone is not what I like. Okay, that looks a little better, I think. And maybe on the effects, make the vignette slightly stronger. I'm gonna go back to HSL because I don't like the hue of this light here. I want it more yellow. And the luminance, let's see. Yeah, I think it looks better with 15. And click OK. And this is the before and after. And then I added a couple of color lookups. Let's see, notes that I have here. I used one of my presets from the Portrait Awesome. I used the PA27 .cube and I dropped the opacity to 50%. You will not find this on the links, but if you're a premium member, you will be able to download. You will find it on the resources folder because this is a premium pack which I created actually for portraits, but it works well for other images as well. Then another color lookup, and this time I use the Crisp Winter, which comes with Photoshop. This will create this bluish vibrant tone, and I'm going to drop the opacity of this to 16% just to give a touch of blue. And then yet another one, the last one, this preset which I like a lot, which is the DK79. You will find this is free. On the website, you will find the link to download this, and all you need to do is just click here, choose Load 3D LUT, and look for this file, which is inside the resources folder, or depending on where you download it, look for this file, okay? And it gives you this this green tone, sorry. And I'm going to drop the opacity of this to between 20 and 30, let's say 25. And that's it. We're done. Manipulation is done. Let's group everything so you can see the post-production, let's call it that way, before and after the final touch of it. With the camera raw, I could create a bit of a glow here, but anyways, I think it looks good already. It's not looking as good as this one because I spent more time here doing this, but I think it looks pretty nice as well. Looks nice. The head here is a little bigger, and I turned it. You can see I rotated just a little bit. But anyways, that's all for now. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you will join me on the next tutorial. Check out my channel. I have more than 300 YouTube tutorials and still counting. And well, that's all for now. Have a nice day, and we'll see you next time.